Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara on Friday, February 7th, your Niagara Falls talk show. All right, so welcome, everybody, and morning, Dave. How are you?
Hi, how's everything going out there, everyone, in these days of mass confusion?
Mass confusion.
Well, I'm talking about our buddy down south, but I have a way of understanding him. I'd like to put this out there that we're having a lot of Trump.
Don't tell me that when you're meeting with him in the summer worked. Oh my God,
Yes, it did because I found ways of
meeting outside the
interpreting.
studio. Yeah.
I found ways of interpreting Trump. I'm trying to really figure out where he is, and then people call him a Hitler, and I call him authoritarian, I call him, egomaniac and all that. But I have a better way of thinking of him. I think of him as a professional wrestler. He is a professional wrestler. The persona he has is a professional wrestler. And it depends on who you are, whether you think he's the good guy wrestler or the bad guy wrestler.
Oh yeah.
The mean and cunning and devious bad guy wrestler, or he is the sainted good guy wrestler, standing up for American values. Like it was exactly like when I saw a professional wrestling match in Welland. The Iron Sheik was there, and a Russian wrestler was there, and at that time, the Soviet Union was still going pretty good, and they raised the flag of the.
Yeah, I go on.
They raised the flag of the USSR and the Iron Sheik and the Russian guy, and everybody booed like crazy. And then, of course, you had your good guy wrestlers on the other side. They looked good, they were handsome, they didn't cheat. And that's so once that came into my mind, now I understand him completely. I think because his number one.
What's his wrestling name?
I haven't figured that one out. Like it depends on. You'd have to have a good guy name and a bad guy name for him. So I'm still working on those. But
so he's not like the Wile E. Coyote or something like that.
No, that would be too soft. I'll have to figure the two names, and I'll get back to you on Monday on that. But if you think of him that way, it's easier to understand. If you think of him as a bad guy wrestler or a good guy wrestler, both of them.
Yeah. We're talking about the big guy down south.
We're talking about Trump and how to think of him. And it's hard to put him in a category, and I figured it out. He's a professional wrestler. That's his persona. And he's a good guy professional wrestler or a bad guy professional wrestler.
But so it depends upon when he comes out, how he comes
a bad guy professional wrestler.
Yeah. So it depends upon how he comes out on the ring.
He beats his chest and says, yeah. So he beats his chest. But the number one thing that Trump does, and he's always done this, and he's a great maneuver of media. The number one thing he needs to do is to keep his name in the headlines all of the time, whether it's bad or good press, depending on which media
as far as
takes him, and they're all freaking out. The right wing media, the lackeys.
Yeah, as far as he's concerned, there's no such thing as bad.
The lackeys at Fox. Exactly, and he knows that he's at a forefront, and he's always got people talking about him in an emotional way, whether he's the hero that has saved America or the man that's going to ruin the world.
Yeah. For every single day of the 4 years that Donald Trump was not president, i.e., the Biden years, just going on to Google or Microsoft, on their default on those default pages, there'd be a picture of Donald Trump on there every single day without fail, right?
Yeah, so he's got his lackeys at Fox that will, it doesn't matter. He could be a baby killer and they'd still find a reason why. They're always finding a reason why whatever he does is wonderful. And the left wing press, of course, doing the opposite, overstating what the bad things are of him. And he's got them wrapped around his finger. He's got the world press jumping through. Anytime anyone says anything, it's an emotionally charged reaction to Trump. And he is working it. He's unbelievable. He's a mastermind at that. Like the lackeys at Fox will just do anything he says. They'll just kind of kiss his feet all the time. And the other side of the media will try to give misinformation the other way about how bad he is. It's really quite interesting. And here he is, like the nature boy Ric Flair's got nothing on Trump. When Trump prances into the ring, basically the wrestling ring, like everybody boos or everybody cheers. It depends on what part of the country.
He doesn't carry the way, right?
No,
because either way he's a
excellent
winner,
at
right?
He's excellent at getting everybody all charged up and working that media.
That works onto our first story, actually. But before we get to that first story, there's something I think we unfortunately I heard yesterday from Angela. Willie Noyles died. He's our local kind of workplace injury expert, and she found out in the last couple of days that he died. Although there's no obituary for him, that I could find as yet. Right?
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that, but I never knew the guy.
You didn't? Okay. I interviewed him once on 4680Q.
Oh, that's a sad thing.
Yeah. And he had a lot to say about workplace injury. And actually, the thing was that Mike, of course, knows him very well. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike.
Mike, of course, knows him very well. Well, the thing is, he did a lot of work for injured workers, as Mike says, and, was absolutely a great person. When I spoke to him, he knew so much about it. You kind of think, well, how come I've never heard of this? But it's not because you're not interested. It's not because you don't care. It's because it was basically it was just basically the way it was, right? And just to let you know, Chris, the deal with 4680Q is they can't open this early in the morning. All right. They said they would love to have us on, but they can't have a 7 o'clock show. All right.
Yeah. The last time I talked to, I think one of the last times I talked to Rick, he was, we were discussing it, and they couldn't have us in there at 7 o'clock, and Peter can't work after 8 o'clock on the radio. He has to go to work.
Yeah.
And that was we actually had photographs sent. Peter and I took a couple of photographs of ourselves. They had a marketing person at the time, and we had written up a couple of things.
We even went in there for a session with I can't remember his name now.
That guy. Yeah, so that's why, Chris, But anyway, I get to go in there sometimes.
I don't know. I can't remember. I can't remember his name. I can't remember his name.
Pat
Yeah.
something. Pat.
Yeah.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
It's escaping me. Pat something.
Yep. You'll remember it later in the day.
Yeah, it'll pop into my head.
Okay. All right. So, first article. Trump's talking about taking over the Gaza Strip. US taking over the Gaza Strip. And this is actually just prime one of these articles, right? Doesn't matter whether you're an ally or an adversary. He's got you talking about this particular. Yeah, that could be it. Pat Borders. Yeah.
Pat Borders. That's it. Yeah.
That seems familiar. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Trump's suggestion that US take over the Gaza Strip is being kind of equally condemned, but but he doesn't kind of care. He's got this smug, well, I got you talking, didn't it? Look on his face. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm afraid now what he has planned to do is for the United States to take over the Gaza Strip, which is sovereign territory, supposed to be part of the Palestinian state. The Gaza Strip and the West Bank, according to treaties and all that, were supposed to be part of the Palestinian state. Now, the West Bank and Gaza are run by two different outfits of Palestinians. Hamas took over control of Gaza, unfortunately, back in 2005 when they had an election. It's important to know that they only got 44% of the vote and took over militarily thereafter, fought the Palestinian Authority, chased them out with arms. Since that time, of course, the Israelis put a big fence around Gaza and restricted access through sea. You can't get in and out of there without them. The food, electrical, everything. So they're completely dependent on how much the Israelis want to feed them. Part of the tunnel network that went into Gaza was for smuggling because the Israelis didn't supply enough stuff. So they had quite a smuggling thing. Thereafter, unfortunately, the Hamas took over a lot of the tunnels for dubious purposes. But Trump wants to take over the Gaza Strip and make it the Riviera of the Mediterranean, of the Eastern Mediterranean. But in order to do that, he has said because Gaza is so completely destroyed that he's going to have to push all the people out of Gaza and make them go live in Egypt and Jordan and any number of other places around the world.
Oh, okay. Stop it there. We can't. That's ludicrous. Hey, I got one other plan. And this is actually how ludicrous this is. They gonna go live on Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah. Well,
exactly.
He is pretending that he's going to. He has to take the Palestinians out of Gaza in order to fix it, because ironically, American bombs made the place unlivable. And he's saying, well, we're going to do a great thing here. We're going to fix it up. We're going to take all the unexploded bombs out. We're going to make it very safe. We're going to make it the Riviera of the Eastern Mediterranean. But all the Palestinians have to leave. And we're going to have to put them in Jordan and Egypt and other places, and they can't live here until we fix it. This is exactly what Netanyahu and the Zionist movement want. They know that if Trump gets these people out, that they'll never let them back in, and the settler movement will come in and take over, and Trump will look the other way. This is exactly what the Zionists have said for many years, that the only way they're going to solve the problem with the Palestinians is to get rid of them in the West Bank and Gaza, is to expel them. But of course, they say transfer them. People like mouthpieces like Ben Shapiro would say the only peaceful way is to transfer these people out of the West Bank and transfer them out of Gaza, and the Israelis take over. Well, they can't really do that because of the universal backlash they'll get from all over the world. But Trump says he's going to come in and he's going to be the nice guy, fix it all up, and it's going to be a place for anyone from around the world to live. Now, what he really means is he's being Netanyahu's he's Netanyahu's henchman here. He can make it sound
and
as if
Netanyahu,
we can make it sound as if he's going to do this wonderful thing and clean it all out. And he's very, very unclear of who's going to come in and populate the place. And when he is asked, well, are the Palestinians going to come back? Well, maybe, yeah, maybe yes, maybe no, some maybe, that kind of thing. He said, who's going to live there? And he said, oh, anyone from one around the world.
And the interesting thing is, according to the BBC article on this one, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the idea was worth paying attention to. Right? In other words, he's gung ho for it, but he can't say that because now he's kowtowing to Trump.
Yeah, remember that the Israelis have a long-term plan, so it doesn't really matter who the president is at any given time. They have an objective. The Zionist objective is to take over the West Bank and Gaza, parts of Syria. As a matter of fact, the greater Israel idea is much bigger than from the river to the sea. And I remind everybody that the Palestinians of demonstrators and stuff like to use the Palestinian from the river to the sea, we must be free. Well, they mean the Palestinians, most of them mean the Palestinians, the West Bank and Gaza, and those that live now in Israel must be free. But it is Likud party mantra that predates that. The Likud party, the party that Benjamin Netanyahu belongs to, has had that in their charter. It's the number one thing in their charter, that they want to take over the West Bank and Gaza from the river to the sea.
Yeah.
So right now, what Trump is doing is really saying that we got to get, we're going to do Israel's dirty work for them.
Yeah.
But it is of note that then they turned around and said, yeah, maybe we'll put troops in, maybe we won't. And then he says, well, we won't put American feet on the ground, which means that the Israelis will do the expelling, will do the ethnic cleansing. Yeah. And they are already preparing, according to the news, to ethnically cleanse.
That's been their whole campaign here, right?
Yeah. And ostensibly, they put a lot of sprinkles on it, saying, oh, we're doing this as a humanitarian thing for Palestinians. They deserve a nice place to live, not here. They deserve a nice place to live in Egypt and Jordan and even Indonesia. They were thinking of sending them to Indonesia.
Yeah. And of course, all of those plans are pie in the sky because they're assuming that Egypt's willing to take them. No. Right.
Egypt is not willing to take them. Jordan is not willing to take them. But the power of the United States is going to be an economic power. Both Egypt and Jordan are heavily reliant on U.S. aid and military help. If he'll do the same thing that he did to Colombia, you do what I tell you, or I'm going to make your life miserable by removing economically, by putting tariffs on and that kind of thing.
Okay, so here's a question for you, and I think the answer is I don't think we know who the current leader of Hamas is. If you're thinking of a few years back, there was a I can't even remember what his name was.
Well, Yahya Sinwar was the military leader, and the political leader was murdered in or assassinated in Tehran. Right now, Hamas is trying to get some leaders going, but
Yeah.
in the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority
Yeah,
runs,
Yasser Arafat, but that
and
was a long.
Mahmoud Abbas is the Palestinian leader. The most foremost Palestinian leader is Mahmoud Abbas.
Yeah, but Yasser Arafat, Chris, is actually a long time ago. That was in the 70s and 80s.
That's right, and he was
He died a long time ago.
Yeah, he was termed as a leftist terrorist, basically. Back in those days, the Palestinian Liberation Army had a very had ties with the USSR. Unfortunately, the latest incarnation of Palestinian resistance in Gaza is Hamas, unfortunately, and there is an Islamic-based type. But once they got in, they never allowed another election. It is said that most of the people in Gaza don't really like Hamas very much at all, but they're kind of forced into it. It's kind of like the Russians when the Second World War came. They were fighting the Germans. They didn't like Stalin. They knew he was a monster, but he knew Hitler was a worse monster. And the Palestinians quite often would think, well, I don't like Hamas, but Israel is worse. They're just going to push us out of this land. And that right now, Trump is just reiterating the same thing that the Zionists have said all along, just to push the Palestinians out. Trump has made has said that they're going to go. That's all. Can't stay there when we rebuild it. Oh my, oh my. Look, no human can live there. So we're going to do you a big favor and ethnically cleanse you out of this land, and we're going to fix everything up. And then who's going to live there? Oh, everyone around the world. Very, very vague. Are you going to let the Palestinians come back? Oh, yeah. But they've made the promise over and over again with Palestinians at other times. You're going to be allowed to come back, and they never are. And I told you that.
The question Chris Simone is asking is, who's talking to Mahmoud Abbas? And the answer is pretty well nobody.
Yeah, there is a whole lot of preliminary stuff going now. The West, of course, is looking at Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority coming into Gaza and then taking over the workings of the government there. But of course, Hamas resists Mahmoud Abbas. They are a religiously driven type of militant group. However, they do supply their people with certain things that through their smuggling tunnels, and they do have an effective government. Basically, they have a health and an education thing. So, just like the Nazis, if you want to compare them to a bad group, the Nazis before the war did supply all those things for the people: hospitals, education, all that other stuff. But now the problem is, now you can make the argument, why not leave the Palestinians there and use the Palestinians? One of the things Trump says is going to bring millions of jobs to the area when they rebuild it. Well, why not use Palestinian labor for that? Well, they're going to say that we can't go in there. We have to ethnically cleanse the place. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get rid of the militants that are there that have arms. So if you imagine the United States going in there with their construction companies and so on, they might come under fire from the Palestinian resistance. Now, it is a really good idea if the Palestinians are left to stay there. If Trump and the Americans want to go in there and build a resort-like area, it would be very good for the Palestinians as long as the Palestinians were left to live there. But his condition is to get them out of there. And of course, the Israelis will never let them back in, or maybe only let a few in here and there. So the whole idea of he is just putting sparkles on ethnically cleansing, and he is putting it this way: oh, those poor people. Now, if we remember, the Israelis tried to force the people out of Gaza with their bombing campaign, and in the initial parts of the war, they said, "Oh my gosh, how come the Egyptians and the Jordanians and all that won't take these poor people in while we fight this war with Hamas?" Well, everybody, the Palestinians included, knew that they would never let them back in if they left.
Yeah.
Now Trump is saying, "Oh, we got to be humanitarian to these people. We have to give them a nice place to live outside of Gaza so we can fix it," but never really saying that they're going to be let come back. Now Netanyahu has said, "Oh yeah, we'll fix it up and then they can come back." Well, everybody knows he's lying. And as soon as the Americans come in and start taking over the area, they're going to allow Zionist settlers in there, as they did in the West Bank. The United States officially are against the settlers in the West Bank, but at this particular time, 1/3 of the West Bank, which is supposed to be Palestinian territory, has been settled by Zionists, the settler movement. Some very aggressive too, who believe that God gave them the land, so it's okay for them to kill and expel the Palestinians. So, and the United States has never enforced its official rule that the West Bank is supposed to be Palestinian land. So and add to this that there are nearly no politician in the Senate or the Congress in the United States that is not terrified of the Israeli lobby. The Israeli lobby is an extreme force that almost every congressman or senator has an Israeli lobby so-called advisor that tells them what to say and how to say it with regards to Israel. The only one that has resisted this, in my knowledge, is Republican Massey from Kentucky. He is a Republican, and the Israeli lobby tried to get rid of him and help rid of him. Now you think, why would they want to get rid of a Republican? Well, he was against sending a lot of American money to Israel. He said, that's a foreign conflict. I don't want to send any of our money over there for that. And so the Israeli lobby started to make advertisements at re-election time for Massey and Congressman Massey, and called him the best friend of Iran and all this stuff. They really had a real negative campaign against him, funded by the Israeli lobby, which just put up a bunch of lies about Massey, but he was popular enough to overcome that. Then later on, they were worried that he might want to become a senator, so they have continued their slur campaign against him. So that's kind of ironic that, and there is a Tucker Carlson interview with him where he goes into this and tells Tucker how the Israeli lobby manipulates Congress and the Senate.
Okay. All right. So Mike is off already. Have a good weekend. Have a good day, Mike, and see you. All right. We'll see you Monday. The other. Okay. So moving on. Trump is threatening to cut off funding for South Africa over its land policy, or is it really about Gaza? Basically, Trump has. Let's go to the core of this. Elon Musk, who was born in South Africa, now a Trump advisor, has joined the debate, saying that the new law discriminated against white people, and asked Cyril Ramaphosa, why do you have to be openly racist on land ownership laws? And Trump has chimed in on this and saying South Africa's that basically South Africa needs to change what it's doing. Land ownership has been, but Cyril Ramaphosa is saying that land ownership has been a contentious issue in South Africa, with most of the private farmland owned by white people. And 30 years after the end of the race, after apartheid, that's still the case.
Well, luckily, I have some insights into this because I have been in Zimbabwe in 1999. I was there for a little more than 3 weeks, and I was able to get quite a bit of insight because my cousin and her family lived there. Her husband was a mining engineer, and they lived there for quite a while, and they saw what was going on there. So of course, the South Africa and Zimbabwe as well. When the whites settled in the area, of course, there was lots of indigenous people, and they came up with this apartheid system, which was a nasty thing, which kept the black citizens at secondary status, basically, and they did all the manual work, basically, that kind of thing. But the whites were educated and sophisticated, and when they started farming. And farming was a big deal in South Africa, as well as the mines. But they did some pretty good things and made the farms very productive. When the white apartheid government was overcome, and the whites stayed there to participate in the new democracy that was there, there were a lot of land reform pushes to get the white farmers, basically the white landowners, and redistribute that land to the black Africans that were indigenously there. So this has been a big problem because, of course, when the country removed its apartheid and the whites did not carve out a separate country for themselves and started and would stay in Africa, there was lots and lots of resentment thereafter. So what's happening is they sing songs. There's a lot of white hatred there. So this is not a trumped up thing. Basically,
I disagree.
Yeah.
I disagree. I know many South Africans, white and black, over my lifetime. I would say that unlike Zimbabwe, where Mugabe stoked up a lot of anti-white feeling, in South Africa, there's not been that anti-white feeling. South Africa has not really been anti-white at all.
Yes, they have.
Not according to the people I know in South Africa. There's been some issue. There's been some questions that have been raised, but they've kind of I don't say they've been as anti-white as like Zimbabwe have.
Okay, Dubal Ibhuna translates to shoot the boar as kill the boar as kill the farmer, is a controversial anti-apartheid South African song. It's okay. They sing that at the ANC rallies. The mostly black political parties sing that song, "Kill the boar, kill the farmer," and of course, the boar is the white farmer. They sing that at the political rallies. They have soccer stadiums where they're in there singing "Kill the boar." Now, you tell me that's not white hatred?
Well, yes and no.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
No, but you see, I plenty of white people in South Africa still continue to live there, still love the nation, right?
Well, basically, there is an element of that. White farmers have been attacked. white farmers are being murdered. That's being a problem. Most of the time, it's by thieves, but a lot of times it's by politically motivated radicals that go on to white farmers and murder the people. White farmers have safe houses for that particular purpose. Almost all white people carry guns because they are afraid. So there is a problem with, and of course the ANC and others say, well, that's just because of high crime and so on. Now, what they're saying, all we want to do is equal things. That means we have to have land reform, which means we have to take the land from the whites and redistribute it to the blacks, like they did in Zimbabwe. Now, there's two things wrong with that, of course. One is that the white farmers are the ones that know how to run the farms. In Zimbabwe, when Mugabe turned over the white farms to the black people, he did not turn it over to black people who knew how to run the farms. He turned it over to his cronies who wrecked the farms. And now Zimbabwe wants the white farmers to come back in and help restore those farms. And when you have political rallies where you sing "Kill the Boer," and these are legitimate political parties. It's kind of like the liberals going in and saying "kill the indigenous" or the indigenous people here. Imagine the indigenous people here, kill the white man, kill the white man. Seriously? So there is an undercurrent of hatred and idea of getting back at the whites because because of apartheid here and so on. Right?
Let me also throw in here a comment that was made by the New Arab in their statement that his remarks touch on a sensitive racial issue while further straining already tense relations between the US and South Africa, particularly amid the disagreements over Israel's war in Gaza, and in particular, South Africa's genocide case against Tel Aviv in the International Court of Justice. And isn't that more the kind of nub of where Trump is going?
Yes. And I would agree with him. Like, Trump has never said anything about South Africa or anything. Now he has the influence of Elon Musk. Of course, Elon Musk is a South African, a white South African.
Yeah.
And of course, he's very much experienced that and what's going on. And of course, he has the ear of the president. But it is seen as an excuse to punish South Africa, not for what they really want to do. What Trump really wants to do is punish South Africa for bringing up the idea that Israel was committing a genocide and taking them to court. It's very important here to remember that the ICJ and the ICC took a long time to determine whether there was enough evidence to have a court case. And no one is saying that Netanyahu or his former defense minister Gallant will be guilty, but there is enough evidence to bring them to trial. Trump hates that. Well, so does the Americans, all in all. They cannot to tarnish Israel like that would be like to tarnish the U.S. because, of course, the U.S. has supplied them with all the bombs and intel they needed to pretty well massacre all those people in Gaza. Yeah. So this is sort of a backdoor way of saying you have terrible land reforms, you are a bigoted area, that kind of thing. You need to have your reforms are not good. They're racially motivated, all that kind of thing. And that's why we're going to take the $430 million we give you for U.S. aid out.
And the interesting thing about that is Cyril Ramaphosa counters on that one, that the US aid through the health initiative PEPFAR represents only 17% of South Africa's spending on their HIV and AIDS program.
Yes. Now, of course, the U.S. aid that goes into the country, of course, there's no as long as that aid is taken and put into the proper places. Now, there is also corruption that unfortunately pervades a lot of this stuff. But the U.S. aid usually, the U.S. aid right now is getting a lot of bad press because of certain parts of it that sound so stupid, like sending condoms to Gaza that were later used in the making of bombs or something like that, or sending money to, I don't know, Nigeria so they could educate people on trends or whatever. There's a lot of dumb stuff, but most of U.S. aid is directed to improve the conditions of the people there and to make them very aware that money is coming from the U.S. Now, when you talk about HIV and stuff like that, the money coming in to help curb that scourge, much of it may have come from U.S. aid, but of course, we know what Trump really wants to do here. I don't think he has a whole lot of concern for the white farmer and the land redistribution that is happening in South Africa, where you take people's, their claim is, of course, they're going to take people's lands and not compensate them in any way and give them over to like the black people, basically. But now, of course, a lot of land reform had to happen. Of course, it does have to happen, but the way they were doing it's not a good way. And so he's using that excuse as a means of punishing South Africa for leading the charge against Netanyahu and Gallant for their apparent genocide in Gaza.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really behind this as well.
Yeah, I do too.
I think that, and in fact, actually, one of the areas, it doesn't, we're just talking about South Africa here, but one of the areas that Trump is looking at is a total cut on U.S. aid.
Yeah, total. Now, what is supposed to be happening is Trump and Rubio.
Here you go. So Trump's wrestling name says Gary Wilkins.
The yellow bastard, the orange bastard.
No, the yellow bastard from Parts Unknown.
Well, I think he's more orange, don't you? Yeah, well, yellow would mean that he's cowardly, so I don't think you want.
No, I don't think you want the yellow. I don't think you want the yellow in there.
He's referring to his hair as yellow, but because Trump likes to go into tanning salons and quite often he ends up being orange. Well,
Chris Simone saying he was seeing US aid trucks all over the developing countries, and locals have never liked them or even knew them.
When I was in Ghana, they had US aid there, and I saw US aid in other parts of the world. A lot of what they do is important, like HIV or whatever else. So they're the problem with the U.S. aid, it is tied to American strategies and strategic issues. They want to go into certain countries and provide aid and strengthen their ties with a certain country, make them kind of obliged to the United States. The Rubio has pointed out that we're not going to give aid to anyone that we can't get something from strategically or alliance wise. Yeah. So really it says something like I'm not going to go into country X because they don't like us, so we're not going to help them with their famine or their starving, but country Y over there, we got good relations with, so we'll help them with their drought.
Well, Chris is saying from first-hand experience, I'm guessing, they treated locals like animals.
That's terrible. But you will find that the governments that for those countries want that aid. And I don't know why they would treat the locals bad. Now, when I was in Ghana, I didn't see any evidence of that. They had a big compound there. It wasn't even guarded. The compound wasn't even guarded. It was out in the open. It had U.S. aid all over it, and they were a functioning part of Accra, and ostensibly that was probably their headquarters for the U.S. aid throughout whatever they were doing in Ghana. But the U.S. aid has stipulations. It's not just a altruistic or humanitarian thing. I'd like to really talk about Chris to see how the U.S. aid did treat them. And what countries was that, Chris? Or it was all the countries that you've been?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So exactly, Dave, and it isn't charitable. And there's no mutual respect at all there, is what he's saying.
Oddly enough, look what's happened in South Africa. Ramaphosa got so upset about this that he couldn't he couldn't talk to anyone in the U.S. So what he did is he went to Elon Musk's father and asked Elon Musk's father to patch him through to Elon Musk.
Yeah.
So his father, Elon Musk and his father don't have good relations, but they do talk. And so Ramaphosa could not connect with the U.S. government, and he had to ask Elon Musk's father to get him a phone call to Elon Musk.
So Chris is saying Western Central Africa.
Western Central Africa, yeah. Well, we see that Ramaphosa,
and we know that you've been
this. Like you would think that if the U.S. aid treated the people so poorly in South Africa that Ramaphosa would say, "Well, we don't want you anyway." But it's $430 million, despite the attitude of the U.S. aid people. It must be doing something beneficial. Otherwise, Ramaphosa wouldn't have freaked out so bad. There's $430 million coming into the country. So,
it's an easy bluff to say we don't need it, especially a country like South Africa that's trying to be, that's a member of BRICS, that's trying to be in in the top flight of the world economies.
Yes, and let's face it, the U.S. has said nothing about the land reforms and the violence that's come with it, and the apparent inability or not wanting to protect the white farmers during this violent transition. Of course, I don't know what the true story is. Of course, there are going to be incidences. How bad they really are, who knows? But when you sing at your political rally, "Kill the white farmer," you got to wonder. And so Ramaphosa himself has been caught singing that song. So there you have it. But really, we do know that the U.S. has had very little concern about the land transfers. Basically, that this is rather punishment for the South Africans to bringing legal action against Netanyahu and Gallant.
All right, moving on. Panama's president said to the U.S. to stop the lies and falsehoods about the canal. Basically, on Thursday, he was talking about the State Department claiming the U.S. government vessels would be allowed to pass through the Panama Canal without paying.
Now, if you break this down, basically that's not what Rubio Trump has claimed that U.S. vessels are going to go through there free. That's wrong. So you have to sort this out and go to his his underling, who is Rubio. And Rubio said, no, because we have treaty obligations to protect Panama Canal if the Panamanians cannot protect it, that our military ships, our Navy, is allowed to pass through there for free. Now, the Panamanians, on the other hand, have never liked the characterization that Trump and Rubio have made about Panama and being lackeys of the Chinese. So that's what he's talking about, lies and falsehoods.
Yeah.
But 75% of the of the ships that go through Panama Canal, transit the Panama Canal, are American, and among them are military ships. So where the confusion is Rubio is sort of hinting that the U.S. Navy should be allowed to go through there free of charge because they have treaty obligations to protect the canal if the canal is attacked or something like that. And he is saying because we have treaty obligations, our Navy should be able to pass through there for free. Now, they're not suggesting that other ships of commerce go through there free. If the American ships went through there free, it would be impossible. There would be no money because 75% of the transit is American.
Yeah, and exactly. And the thing is that, you know, whilst what you're saying, 75% of the transit is American, that may well be freighters from places like Los Angeles coming through the canal and trading with, let's say, Africa or Europe or somewhere like that, not necessarily going from a US port to a US port. And again,
it could go anywhere because the United States there, of course, the east-west traffic through the Panama Canal for bulk cargo is extreme. Like you can take something from Seattle and take it to New York City. Going through rail across the states is one way, but a better way for huge bulk is by ship.
Yeah, but again, you know, and again, US East Coast things often will go to places like India and Tokyo,
all over the world,
like that, all over the world. So yes, it's natural that it would be largely American shipping through there because you know, and because American shipping is actually makes up probably the majority of the world's shipping.
Yeah,
probably at least 50% of the world's shipping is American, I would think.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say probably Chinese. They depend on exports, but I wouldn't want to put a number on it because I wouldn't know. Ship commerce around the world is amazing. But
that's fair.
Basically, if you want to really get down to it, Panama is very, very important in the United States. Obviously,
yeah,
it is.
Obviously it is.
Their Navy needs it. Obviously, they need it. Now, of course, the Panamanians know this, so that's why they've and of course they have been convinced by Rubio, that the Chinese have outsized influence in the area. And this could be of negative consequence to the United States commerce and defense, because of course the Navy ships have to go through there. If they have an aircraft or a frigate that in the Atlantic, they need to go to the Pacific. They have to go through the canal. So it's vitally important for American defense. It's also vitally important to American commerce. Of course, having 75% of the ships that go through the canal being American. Now, Trump has said that they are overcharged. That's not true. They're all charged the same. And this particular argument is not about American ships going through. It's about American Navy ships
going through. Yeah.
And that hasn't been settled. Now, the problem with the Panamanian president is he is overwhelmed by all the miscommunications that have come out since this is very beginning. How Trump and his minions have painted the picture. He has said from the very beginning he's very cooperative, and he has had He has been trying to tell everybody about the drought conditions that have reduced the ability for the Panama Canal to put ships from one end to the other. There is longer delays because of water access. The canal requires water, and if you have a drought, then you have less water to be put into the canal, and that slows traffic down. So there are a lot of issues that aren't put out in the Western press. But however, the whole narrative is controlled by Trump and his blab. And that's what the Panama president is upset about.
Mm-hmm. Naturally. Yeah. Okay. Right. So let's cover. Oh, hang on. We've got one comment about this. Chris is saying thanks for the show. All right. So thank you, Chris. You're welcome.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for adding that about the USAID. I've seen their offices in the places I've gone, also in West Africa, but I didn't know that they were so snobby.
Yeah. Okay, so one thing we can deal with quickly, the city is going to be looking at improving the rules for fence construction, where you're talking about land that is being where there's construction going on land. And it's interesting because, in fact, on my there's actually couple of areas where fencing is bit lackadaisically put up, not stopping people getting in, and in fact, in some areas, I've seen some of these fencing falling over in the high wind. So I'm not surprised that there is enhanced rules coming down the line. That said, there have been some areas where there's very solid fencing in construction zones. So it's got to be said that it's basically very very different. Depends upon the areas that you go to, the construction zone you go to.
Well, when I saw this in the agenda, I was a little bit curious. I know that OSHA, the Ontario Health and Safety Act, has standards by which fencing should be put up. And having been on many, many different construction sites, that has been an improvement going forward. And I was wondering, why does the city want to add more and even add more to the Building Code Act, which is which is Ontario? What was it? And then I just kind of assumed that it was aesthetics. So you have.
Well, I think it's about giving their bylaw officers more powers if you've got bad fencing.
Well, it is about aesthetic. Well, for one thing, the ministry is the one that's supposed to come down on building sites that have inadequate fencing. And if a building site does follow the OSHA requirements for fencing in and around a construction site or inside the areas of a construction site, it would be fine. It would be all right. However, some of these fences are not maintained, so that's one problem. So they want the bylaw officers to be able to go in there and kind of force them to stay up to code. But that's actually the ministry's responsibility. A lot of it is aesthetics. They don't like the way these things look, particularly for tourists coming into town. So the bylaw will be retroactive. The chief building official, Luciano Chicha, if I pronounce that right, said the city has a lot of complaints about projects, one on Ferry Street, Stanley, Tourist Core, and other Heart. Enforcement will be on complaint basis. Contractors will be advised of the requirements of the bylaw, and fencing must be of uniform material. See, it is basically about aesthetics, right? Uniform material and a minimum of 12.5 millimeter thick, smooth exterior grade plywood, wafer board, oriented strand. See, some of this is
Well, some of these are not like
none of
that.
this would be part of safety, but it's really more about aesthetics, what it looks like.
Yeah, some of these are not like that. I've seen just and I'm sure they're up to code. The cage type fencing with banners on the inside, advertising banners tied to the inside, saying this company name and what they and some pictures of the proposed project.
Various sections of the bylaw provide options to improve the look of the allowable fencing, such as uniform painting, art, contractors' logos, etc. So it seems to me that safety is not just the issue, or I can see where fencing starts to fall down or is not maintained. That is a problem. But if you have fencing that's in compliance with OSHA, then you will have a safe barrier. What they're looking for is something a little bit that looks better.
Basically. You know what I find fascinating with some of these places? You actually when you're walking past them, you actually want to look in every once in a while just to see what they're doing.
It says here the bylaw also incorporates language to ensure vandalized fencing is removed immediately. So obviously a big impetus of this is aesthetics.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I just wanted to bring that one up and kind of end the day with that one. All right.
Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Let's pray for peace. Let's hope that Gaza deal doesn't come through. Let's hope the U.S. owns Gaza and uses Palestinians for labor and keeps the Palestinians there so that they can now have a better life in the Riviera of the Western Mediterranean. Of course,
I don't like the Riviera idea, because that's saying basically we're going to make this a nice Playboy backyard.
Yeah, poor people not allowed.
Poor people not allowed. So we don't need another Monaco.
Whatever, if it's going to make money for Palestinians, if the Palestinians are allowed to stay there, not be expelled, not be ethnically cleansed. But basically, yeah, if that were the case, that would be fine, but it's not. It's just another way of saying this is another way of ethnically cleansing you. It's an excuse.
Yeah, exactly. All right.